Hello, everyone. Tonight, we're diving into a story that's as raw as a winter wind cutting through an open window. Picture me standing at my kitchen sink, the warm water kissing my hands as I scrub the last plate, the faint clink of ceramic echoing in a house I built with my own sweat and tears. It's a home filled with memories of my late husband's laughter, my son's first wobbly steps, but tonight, those memories are about to be shattered. Betrayal by your own flesh and blood. You might not survive the sting of it. So, before you get too comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I'm doing here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Now, turn off the lights, maybe switch on a fan for that soft hum, and let's begin our journey tonight. The kitchen was quiet, save for the gentle splash of water against porcelain. My hands moved automatically, rinsing plates under the tap, the warmth soothing the ache in my fingers from years of hard work. I just finished dinner alone again when my son, Daniel, walked in. His arms were crossed, his jaw tight, and his eyes, they were colder than a January frost. My boy, the one I'd raised single-handedly after his father passed, looked at me like I was a stranger in my own home. "Mother, we need to talk," he said, his voice flat, like he was addressing a tenant rather than the woman who'd given him everything. I wiped my hands on a tea towel, my heart flickering with a foolish hope. Maybe he'd found a job. Maybe he wanted to thank me for paying their bills these past months while he and his wife, Emma, got back on their feet. "All right, love," I said softly, turning to face him with a smile. "What's on your mind?" He didn't meet my eyes. Instead, he leaned against the counter, his gaze fixed on the floor. "Emma's parents are moving in," he said. "You need to move out." The words hit me like a slap, sharp and disorienting. I blinked, my smile frozen. "Move out." My voice cracked, betraying the calm I tried to hold on to. "What do you mean?" "Daniel, this is my house." He shrugged, casual as if we were discussing the weather. "Not anymore. We've decided it makes more sense for them to be here. You'll figure something out." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for him to laugh and say it was all a jest. But his face was stone, unyielding. My own son, standing in the home I'd built brick by brick after his father's death, was telling me to leave this house, where I'd worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on, where I'd sewn his school uniforms by hand because we couldn't afford new ones, was no longer mine in his eyes. "Daniel," I whispered, gripping the edge of the counter so tightly my knuckles whitened. "You can't be serious." He smirked a cruel, unfamiliar twist of his lips that didn't belong on the boy I'd raised. "I'm dead serious. Go stay with a friend or..." He paused, his eyes hardening to steel. "Go to hell. I don't care." My chest tightened, a sharp pain blooming like I'd been stabbed. "Why?" I managed, my voice barely audible. He didn't flinch. "Because this is our family now. Emma's family. We're building a future here. You're old. You'll be fine." Emma sauntered in then, her phone in one hand, a glass of wine in the other, her lips curled in a smirk that screamed victory. "Is she still here?" she asked, her tone dripping with contempt, as if I were a lingering guest who'd overstayed her welcome. Daniel didn't answer her. He just turned to me, his voice cutting through the air. "Start packing. Tonight." My mind went blank. For years, I'd poured every ounce of myself into him, sleepless nights, endless shifts, every penny scraped together for his future. And now I was disposable, like an old piece of furniture they couldn't be bothered to dust. I wanted to scream, to grab his shoulders and shake him until he remembered who I was. Instead, I stood frozen, the taste of betrayal bitter on my tongue. Emma leaned against the doorframe, sipping her wine, scrolling through her phone as if my pain were a sideshow. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," she said without looking up, her voice lazy but sharp. My throat burned. But I refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. "Fine," I said, my voice quiet, almost calm. Daniel's eyebrows twitched, like he'd expected a fight. But I just smiled, a small, cold smile that felt foreign on my face. "I'll leave." Emma gave a light, mocking laugh. "Good decision." I walked past them, each step heavier than the last, the creak of the floorboards echoing like a funeral march. As I reached the stairs, I heard Daniel mutter, "Make sure she's out by tomorrow." My hand gripped the railing, my nails digging into the wood. Tomorrow, after everything I'd done. I was being tossed out like rubbish. I kept walking, my head high, even as my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. They thought they'd won. They thought I was powerless, a tired old woman with nothing left to fight for. But they didn't know me. Not really. As I climbed the stairs, the weight of their words pressing down on me, I felt something shift inside a spark, faint but fierce. They had no idea what was coming. Oh, and here's a little joke to lighten the mood. Why did the plate stay in the sink? Because it knew it wasn't getting kicked out. Unlike me, apparently, and another what do you call a house that betrays you? A homewrecker in more ways than one. I kept moving, the air thick with the scent of lemon dish soap and heartbreak. By the way, if life were a tea party, I'd just been served a cup of betrayal bitter, with no sugar in sight. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking under my weight like an old friend whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. The railing felt smooth under my palm, worn from years of hands gripping at mine, my husband's, Daniel's tiny fingers when he was learning to walk. This house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was a tapestry of my life, woven with threads of joy and sorrow. My husband's laughter had bounced off these walls, filling the air with warmth on cold evenings. Daniel's first steps had been right here on this landing, his chubby legs wobbling as I cheered him on. And now, it felt like I was being unraveled, thread by thread, erased from the very fabric I'd created. I pushed open the door to my bedroom, the hinges sighing softly, and shut it behind me with a quiet click. For a moment, I just stood there, the room enveloping me in its familiar embrace, the faint scent of lavender from the sachets I'd tucked into the drawers, the soft glow of the bedside lamp casting long shadows on the wallpaper I'd chosen after my husband passed. It was a simple pattern, floral and hopeful, a reminder that life could bloom again, even after loss. My legs gave way, and I sank onto the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under me like a sigh. I pressed my hands into my lap, knuckles turning white as I fought the urge to scream. What had I done to deserve this? Raised a son with love, sacrificed everything, only to be discarded like yesterday's newspaper. Instead of crumbling, I reached for the old suitcase in the wardrobe. It was tucked away at the back, dusty from disuse, the zipper stiff and protesting as I tugged it open. The sound was almost comical, like the case was grumbling about being disturbed after all these years. Ha! If suitcases could talk, this one would say, "Boy, haven't you got enough baggage already?" I started folding clothes, a faded blouse I'd worn to Daniel's school plays, a woolen jumper that still carried the faint whiff of my husband's aftershave from the days I'd borrow it for comfort. Each item brought a flood of memories, the blouse stained with applause and pride, the jumper wrapped around me on lonely nights when I'd cry myself to sleep. My fingers trembled as I lifted my wedding photo from the nightstand. There we were, young and beaming, his arm around my waist, promising forever. Forever had been cut short by illness. But I'd carried on for Daniel. What would he say now, seeing our son treat me like this? I stared at his smile, willing it to give me strength, but all I got was silence, broken only by the muffled laughter drifting up from downstairs. Their laughter, Daniel's deep chuckle, mingling with Emma's sharp, tinkling one. It slithered under the door like smoke, curling into my bones, a warning that twisted my gut. I froze, straining to listen. Emma's voice cut through, sweet but laced with venom, yes. "Mum, it's all ours now." Finally, that word ours hit like a punch, burning through me like acid. Everything I'd worked for, the double shifts at the factory and the office, the skipped meals to save for his education, reduced to a trophy they couldn't wait to claim. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. I grabbed another handful of closed trousers, scarves, and stuffed them in without folding, the fabric crumpling like my resolve had moments ago. Tears blurred my vision, hot and insistent, but I blinked them back. Not yet. Not in this house, where they'd see my weakness as another victory. My mobile buzzed on the nightstand, vibrating against the wood with an insistent hum. It was Linda, my old friend from down the road. Her message glowed on the screen. "How are you holding up?" I stared at it, fingers hovering over the keys. But what could I say? "My son just tossed me out like an old boot. How do you explain that the boy you'd raised, the one who'd once drawn you pictures of hearts and houses, now saw you as a burden?" I set the phone down, zipping the suitcase with a final, defiant tug. The room felt smaller now, the walls closing in with their memories. the curtains I'd sewn myself during sleepless nights, the little crack in the mirror from when Daniel had hurled a toy in a tantrum, his tearful apology melting my heart back then. But hearts don't melt forever. Sometimes they harden. I dragged the suitcase to the door, the wheels rumbling softly over the carpet, and paused one last time. The air smelled of dust and regret, the lavender fading into something mustier. Downstairs, their voices rose again, Emma's words slicing through. Make sure she doesn't take anything that belongs to us. Belongs to us. The audacity made me snort a bitter, quiet laugh. If entitlement were a currency, they'd be millionaires by now. Joke's on them. What belongs to us often comes back to bite, like a boomerang with teeth. My legs felt like lead as I hauled the case down the stairs, each thump echoing my heartbeat. The banister was cool under my hand, a stark contrast to the heat rising in my cheeks. I could hear them in the living room now, glasses clinking. Were they toasting my departure? Emma stood at the bottom, arms folded, that smirk plastered on her face like cheap makeup. "Leaving so soon?" she asked, swirling her wine, the red liquid catching the light like blood. I met her gaze, then looked past her to Daniel, who avoided my eyes, shuffling his feet. My throat ached with unsaid words, accusations. Please, questions, but I swallowed them down, forcing that small, cold smile again. It made her blink, just for a second, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "Yes," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm leaving." She tilted her head, mocking as ever. "Good. We'll send your things if we find any more." As if my life were scraps they'd deign to post. My heart splintered, shards digging in, but I didn't let it show. I walked past her, the suitcase bumping against my leg, each step a burn in my memory. The front door loomed, the brass handle cold as I turned it. Night air rushed in, crisp and biting, slapping my face like a wake-up call. For a split second, I almost turned back, almost begged for mercy from the son who'd once begged me for bedtime stories. But his words echoed, "Go to hell." "I don't care." I stepped out, the door clicking shut behind me, sealing away the life I'd known. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I made my way to the car, the suitcase wheels protesting the uneven path. Popping the boot, I heaved it in, the thud final and echoing. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, breath shaking in the confined space. The engine purred to life, but I didn't drive off straight away. I sat there, staring at the house through the windscreen. The warm lights in the windows, silhouettes moving inside like ghosts of a family that wasn't mine anymore. Something inside me hardened then, a resolve forming like ice over a pond. They thought they'd won, that I'd slink away broken. But they were wrong, very wrong. As I finally pulled away, the tires whispering over the drive, I allowed myself a tiny, sardonic chuckle. After all, what's the difference between a house and a home? One you can lose. The other lives in your heart, and mine was still beating, ready to fight back. I sat in the car, my hands still clamped around the steering wheel, like it was the only thing anchoring me to reality. The engine idled softly, a low rumble that vibrated through the seat, mixing with the erratic thump of my heart. Outside, the night air was thick with the scent of damp earth and distant rain, the kind that promises a storm but holds back just to tease. The house loomed in the rear-view mirror, its windows glowing warmly, mocking me with the life continuing inside without a hitch. Silhouettes moved behind the curtains, Daniel and Emma, no doubt, clinking glasses or perhaps even dancing in celebration. My chest heaved, breaths coming in short, shaky bursts, as if I'd sprinted a mile rather than walked a few yards. "You really did it." "Daniel," I whispered to the empty dashboard, my voice cracking in the confined space. "You really kicked me out." The words hung in the air, heavy and unreal. For a moment, I thought I'd shatter right there, tears finally spilling over. But then my phone buzzed on the passenger seat, its screen lighting up like a beacon in the dark. I glanced at it, my vision blurring slightly, and saw Lisa's name. A small, involuntary curl tugged at my lips, not quite a smile, but close enough. Lisa wasn't just any friend. She was my solicitor, the one I'd turned to a few months back when the air in the house had started to thicken with unspoken tensions. Emma's probing questions about my finances. Daniel's sudden interest in the property deeds. It had all felt off, like a puzzle missing pieces, but hinting at a picture I didn't want to see. One sleepless night, staring at the ceiling while their whispers drifted from the next room, I'd picked up the phone and called her. "Help me protect what's mine," I'd said, my voice barely above a whisper, and she had. A quiet, bitter laugh escaped me now, echoing oddly in the car. They thought I was daft, oblivious to their schemes. But the truth was, that house wasn't even in my name anymore, not legally. At least, I transferred it to Lisa months ago, a quiet safeguard tucked away in her office files, shared with no one, not even Linda. As far as the law was concerned, Daniel and Emma were nothing more than squatters in someone else's property. The irony tasted sweet, like a secret chocolate hidden from prying eyes. If betrayal were a game, I just played my trump card, though. Let's be honest. Who expects their own son to force a hand like that? Joke aside. What's the difference between a solicitor and a superhero? One wears a cape, the other saves your bacon when family turns foe. I swiped to answer, the phone's speaker filling the car with Lisa's calm, steady voice, a balm against the chaos in my chest. "Are you all right?" she asked, concern threading through her words like fine silk. "He did it," I whispered, leaning my head back against the seat, the leather cool against my neck. "He told me to leave. Said Emma's family is moving in." There was a pause, then a low chuckle from her end, not mocking, but knowing, well, that's going to pose quite a problem for them, isn't it? I stared out at the night sky through the windscreen, stars peeking through scattered clouds, indifferent to my turmoil. "I walked out smiling," I said, almost to myself, the words tasting of defiance. "They think they've broken me." "Good," Lisa replied, her tone firm yet soothing. "Let them believe that I'll make the call first thing tomorrow morning." My heart quickened, a mix of fear and exhilaration surging through me. "You mean they'll have 72 hours to vacate? No extensions, no excuses?" "Precisely," she confirmed, her voice like a steady anchor in stormy seas. A strange calm washed over me then, seeping into my bones, easing the tightness in my chest. For the first time that night, I didn't feel like a victim, adrift and powerless. I felt prepared, like I'd laid a trap they were walking straight into. "Thank you, Lisa," I murmured, my fingers finally loosening their grip on the wheel. "Don't thank me yet," she said with a hint of wry amusement. "This is merely the opening act." The call ended with a soft beep, leaving me in silence once more. But it was no longer suffocating. The dashboard clock glowed 10:47 p.m., ticking forward relentlessly. I sat there for what felt like hours, though it was probably minutes, letting the events replay in my mind. The cold smirk on Daniel's face, Emma's contemptuous sip of wine, the way the door had clicked shut behind me like a full stop on a chapter of my life. But chapters end so new ones can begin, don't they? And mine was far from over. Finally, I shifted the car into gear, the tires crunching over gravel as I pulled away from the curb. The house shrank in the mirror, its lights fading like dying embers. Street lamps cast long shadows on the road, the world outside a blur of dark hedges and parked cars. I drove aimlessly at first, the radio off, preferring the hum of the engine to any distracting melody. My mind wandered to happier times, Daniel as a lad, his face smeared with jam from stolen biscuits, giggling as I pretended to scold him. "Mom, you're the best," he'd say, hugging my legs. Where had that boy gone? Swallowed by Emma's influence, perhaps, or lost in the grind of adulthood. Either way, the man who'd stood in my kitchen tonight was a stranger. A red light halted me at a junction, the engine purring patiently. I glanced at my reflection in the rear view, eyes tired, lines etched deeper by the evening's toll, but there was a spark there. 2, a quiet fire. "You've been through worse," I told myself softly, the words fogging the glass slightly. Losing my husband had been a blow that nearly felled me, but I'd risen, rebuilt. This was just another storm, and storms pass, leaving clearer skies if you weather them right. The light turned green, and I pressed on, heading towards Linda's place. She'd offered her spare room more than once, sensing the tensions at home. The roads were quiet, the occasional car whooshing past with headlights piercing the dark. The air from the cracked window carried a chill, nipping at my cheeks, but it felt invigorating, a reminder that life pulsed on beyond those walls. By the time I pulled into Linda's drive, the adrenaline had ebbed, leaving exhaustion in its wake. I grabbed my suitcase, the wheels rumbling over the path, and knocked softly on her door. She opened it almost immediately, her face softening with concern. "Oh, love," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of chamomile tea and comfort. No questions, just warmth. We sat in her kitchen, a mug of hot cocoa in my hands, steam rising like whispers of solace. I recounted the evening in hushed tones, my voice steady but laced with that musing sarcasm. Fancy that my own son playing landlord in a house he didn't build. If only he'd put that energy into finding a job. Linda chuckled softly. but her eyes were sad. "You'll get through this," she assured me, squeezing my hand, as I lay in her guest bed later. The sheets crisp and unfamiliar. Sleep eluded me at first. The ceiling fan whirred gently overhead, a soft whoosh that mimicked the waves of my thoughts. But eventually, fatigue won, pulling me under. They thought they'd pushed me out for good, left me with nothing. But tomorrow, the tables would turn, and oh, what a turn it would be. Here's a light one to drift off on. Why did the mother cross the road? To get to the other side of justice. I woke up the next morning in Linda's guest room, a peculiar stillness settling in my chest, like a fog rolling over the moors. It wasn't peace that's too gentle, too warm. This was cold, unyielding, a stone lodged deep inside, weighing me down yet keeping me grounded. The curtains filtered the early light, casting a soft, gray glow across the quilt, which smelled faintly of lavender detergent, a comforting contrast to the chaos of last night. My body ached from the tension, muscles tight as if I'd spent the hours clenching against invisible blows. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the faint hum of traffic outside like a distant murmur, while Daniel's words replayed in my mind. Go to hell. I don't care. 29 years of motherhood, sleepless nights, rocking him through fevers, double shifts to afford his football boots reduced to that. It stung, sharp as a nettle, but beneath it simmered something else resolve, sitting up slowly, my throat dry as parchment. I glanced at the clock, 8:17. The world outside carried on, oblivious, birds chirping in Linda's garden, a dog barking down the street. For a long moment, I just breathed, in and out, trying to steady the whirl in my head. Part of me yearned to curl back under the covers, to pretend it was all a nightmare. But reality doesn't fade with dawn. Instead, I swung my legs over the side, the wooden floor cool under my feet, and padded to the window. Pushing the curtain aside, I watched the sun climb, too bright for the shadows in my soul. Yesterday, I'd left my home with the smile plastered on, even as my heart screamed. That smile wasn't for them. It was my vow this wasn't the end. I dressed quietly, slipping into a gray jumper and black trousers from the suitcase, each fold a reminder of hasty packing, memories tucked away like forgotten letters. The fabric felt rough against my skin, a tactile echo of the roughness ahead. Downstairs, Linda had left a note on the kitchen table. Help yourself to brekkie. Call if you need me. Her kindness was a lifeline, but I couldn't face food yet. Instead, I brewed a cuppa, the kettle's whistle piercing the quiet, steam rising in lazy curls that carried the earthy scent of tea leaves. As I sipped, my mind drifted back to how this all began, not last night, but months ago, when the cracks first appeared. It started subtly, didn't it? Emma's questions about my savings, casual at first, then probing, like fingers picking at a scab. How much is the house worth these days? She'd ask over dinner, her eyes gleaming under the pendant light. Daniel, once my confidant, began parroting her, talking about our future as if I weren't part of it. I'd lie awake then, the clock ticking mockingly, wondering if I was paranoid or prescient. One night, after overhearing them whisper about taking over, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Heart pounding, I dialed Lisa, my solicitor and old school chum, her voice a steady anchor in the wee hours. Lisa, I think they're plotting something. I'd confessed, my words tumbling out in a rush. The house, it's all I have left. She'd listened without judgment, her tone calm as a mill pond. We'll protect it, she'd said. And we did, over coffee in her office the next week. Amid stacks of files smelling of ink and paper, we'd drawn up the papers, transferring the deed to her name, a temporary trust, legal and ironclad, to shield it from grasping hands. It's like hiding your jewels in a safe, she joked, her pen scratching across the forms. I'd signed with a trembling hand, the weight of secrecy settling like a cloak. No one knew, not Daniel, not Emma, not even Linda. It was my insurance, a quiet rebellion against the betrayal I sensed brewing. Funny, isn't it? Mothers are supposed to nurture, not plot, but when pushed, we become strategists. Joke one. What do you call a mum with a secret plan? A plot twist parent. Back in Linda's kitchen, the tea cooled in my mug as I reflected on that decision. It had felt drastic then, but now, vindication. My phone buzzed on the table, jolting me back. Lisa's name flashed, and I answered, cradling the device to my ear. Morning, she said, her voice crisp, efficient. How are you holding up after last night? Better than expected, I murmured, tracing the rim of my cup. That call in the car? It grounded me. reminded me I'm not powerless. Good, she replied, a smile audible in her tone. I've been thinking about the details. The transfer was seamless, no red flags. Legally, they're trespassing now. I'll send the notice today, but let's confirm 72 hours. No mercy. My heart thudded, a mix of nerves and steel. Yes, they need to learn. We chatted briefly, her words weaving assurance like a warm blanket details on the eviction process. Potential pushback, but all in our favor. You've been clever, she added lightly. Like a fox in a henhouse. But the hens are the ones clucking madly now. I chuckled softly, the sound foreign after the night's heaviness. If only they'd seen it coming. But arrogance blinds, doesn't it? Ending the call, I felt steadier. The plan no longer a shadow, but a shield. I grabbed my keys and headed out, the door clicking shut behind me. The morning air fresh with dew-kissed grass. Driving to a nearby cafe, the roads quiet save for the occasional cyclist. I found a spot near Lisa's office. The cafe was sparse. A couple of students hunched over laptops, the aroma of fresh coffee and baked goods wafting from the counter. I slid into a corner booth, the vinyl seat squeaking slightly, and ordered a black coffee, its bitterness mirroring my mood. Wrapping my hands around the mug, the heat seeping into my palms, I stared into the dark liquid, swirling like my thoughts. Flashbacks intruded, signing those papers. Lisa's office lit by a desk lamp. The click of her stapler sealing the deal. This protects you, she'd said. Family can be fickle. How right she was. Now, with the plan in motion, I imagined their faces when the notice arrived. Emma's smirk crumbling. Daniel's entitlement cracking. It wasn't revenge, it was justice. Served cold as this coffee. Another light quip. Why did the lawyer cross the road? To get to the other side of the law where the real power lies. My phone buzzed again, Lisa's text. It's done. Papers en route. A slow, bitter smile crept across my face, my fingers trembling as I typed back. Thank you. Leaning back, I exhaled, the booth's cushion yielding softly. I could picture it vividly. Though I wasn't there, the sharp knock on the door, echoing through my now Lisa's house, Emma opening it, phone in hand, that fake sweetness masking her surprise. Yes, can I help you? She'd say, tilting her head. The solicitor's representative, calm and no nonsense, holding out the envelope. Are you Mrs. Harris? This is an official notice. The property is owned by Lisa Carter. You have 72 hours to vacate. Her laugh would ring out, brittle as thin ice. There's some mistake. This is our home. No mistake. Ma'am, you're trespassing. Non-compliance means police involvement. In my mind's eye, her face paled, the wine from last night forgotten. Daniel storming in, snatching the papers, his voice rising. This can't be right. I'll call my lawyer. As if he had one, the thought brought a sardonic huff joke. 3, what do you call a son without a clue? Airhead, apparently, as I sat there, the cafe filling with morning chatter. The clink of cups and murmur of conversations. Something shifted inside me. The plan, once a desperate safeguard, now felt like empowerment. They thought they'd strip me bare, but I'd been one step ahead. And soon, very soon, they'd learn the cost of underestimating a mother's foresight. I put the phone down after Lisa's text, leaning back in the booth, the vinyl creaking softly under me like an old chair settling its bones. The cafe's hum enveloped me, the hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of conversations blending into a soothing white noise, the rich aroma of ground beans mingling with buttery pastries from the display case. My coffee had gone cold, its surface rippling slightly as I tapped the mug. But I didn't mind. The bitterness on my tongue matched the twist in my gut. Outside, the sun climbed higher, casting dappled shadows through the window, warming my arm where it rested on the table. I could almost hear the clock ticking forward, each second bringing the moment closer, the knock that would shatter their illusion of victory. In my mind, it played out like a scene from one of those teledramas, vivid and unsparing. The house, my house, standing quiet in the morning light, birds flitting about the garden I'd tended for years. Then, the sharp rap on the door, deliberate, echoing through the hall like a judge's gavel. Emma would answer, wouldn't she? Hair tousled from sleep, perhaps still in her dressing gown, phone clutched in one hand as always, that perpetual lifeline to her social world. Yes, can I help you? She'd say, her voice laced with that faux politeness, the kind that drips honey but hides thorns. The man at the door, Lisa's chap, a solicitor's runner in a neat suit, clipboard in hand, would stand unmoved, his tone flat and professional, cutting through any pretense. Mrs. Harris, I'm here to deliver an official notice. This property is legally owned by Lisa Carter. You and any occupants are residing without consent. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises. I'd pictured her reaction a dozen times since last night. The initial blink of confusion, then that loud, brittle laugh bubbling up, the sort people use when denial kicks in. There's been some mistake. She'd snap, her smile tightening like a noose. This is our home. We've lived here for months. No mistake, ma'am, he'd reply, unflinching, handing over the papers with a steady hand. The envelope would feel heavy in her grasp, the seal official and unforgiving. You're trespassing. Failure to comply will involve law enforcement. Good day. And with that, he'd turn on his heel, leaving her standing there, the door ajar, cool air rushing in to match the chill down her spine. Back in the cafe, a student nearby laughed at something on his laptop, the sound jarring me back. I smiled faintly to myself, fingers tightening around the mug. For months, I'd let them chip away at me. Emma's snide remarks over breakfast, Daniel's growing distance, treating me like an inconvenient lodger in my own space. I'd kept quiet, smiling through the barbs, while inside I plotted this very moment. Now, the law stood at their door, a silent enforcer reminding them of their place. Powerless. Hardly. It was them scrambling now. My phone buzzed again, Lisa calling this time. I answered, keeping my voice low amid the cafe's chatter. Is he there? I asked, barely above a whisper, my heart picking up pace like a drum in a quiet room. He's there, she confirmed, her chuckle low and knowing. Emma's voice is shaking something fierce. I almost feel a twinge of pity for her. Almost, what about Daniel? I pressed, my throat tightening around his name, a mix of love and ache twisting inside. He just barged in, Lisa said, painting the picture with her words, snatched the papers right out of my man's hand like they were on fire. He's yelling now something about a colossal mistake, threatening to call his own lawyer. I let out a bitter laugh, soft but edged. His lawyer. The lad can't even hold down a job. It's like watching a kitten hiss at a lion, adorable, but utterly pointless. Joke one for the morning. What do you call a son? Bluffing about legal muscle. An air of hot air. Lisa joined in the chuckle, her voice a comforting anchor. He's pacing, phone in hand, trying to ring you. By the way, bet you can guess the script blame. Bluster, maybe a dash of begging if he's smart. As if on cue, my screen lit up with Daniel's name, the vibration buzzing against the table like an insistent bee. For a fleeting second, my heart betrayed me, fluttering with that old maternal pull. I wanted to pick up, to hear him say, Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Come home. But deep down, I knew better. It would be fury, accusations flying like arrows. What have you done? As if I'd been the one to shatter our family. I stared at the ringing phone, the cafe's ambient noise fading to a distant hum, until it went to voicemail. Not today, I whispered to the empty air, my finger hovering before silencing it. We chatted a bit more, Lisa updating me on the logistics. The notice was ironclad, backed by the deed transfer we'd executed so carefully. They'll have to pack, she said. No extensions. No appeals without a fight. They can't win. It felt surreal. This shift in power, like turning the tables mid-meal and watching the cutlery fly. For so long, I'd been the one yielding, biting my tongue while they plotted behind closed doors. Now, the script flipped, and I was the director calling the shots. Hanging up, I lingered in the cafe, people coming and going around me, a barista calling orders, the door jingling with each entry. My coffee was stone cold now, but I sipped anyway, the chill matching the cool resolve settling in. I imagined the scene unfolding back at the house, Emma clutching the papers, her face paling under that carefully applied makeup. Daniel ranting, perhaps crumpling the notice in his fist. This can't be happening, he'd mutter, dialing frantically, only to hit my voicemail again. Emma might snap at him, blame shifting like sand. Your mom did this, that sneaky old cow. The thought brought a sardonic twist to my lips. Sneaky. Perhaps, but necessity breeds invention, as they say. And oh, the invention here transferring the house to safeguard it. A move born of quiet desperation. It wasn't just bricks they were after. It was my legacy. The sweat equity poured into every room. Now, they'd taste the bitterness of their greed. Another light jest. Why did the in-laws cross the line? To get to the other side of eviction surprise. Time stretched as I sat there. The sun shifting, casting longer shadows across the floor tiles. My mind wandered to what came next, their frantic packing, arguments echoing in rooms I'd once filled with love. Would Daniel pause, holding an old photo, regret flickering, or would anger blind him further? Either way, The clock was ticking. 72 hours, a merciless countdown. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt the weight lifting, breath coming easier amid the cafe's warmth. But beneath it lingered a pang for the boy he'd been, the family we'd lost. Still, resolve hardened like cooling wax. They'd thought me broken, but I was merely bent, ready to spring back. As a couple at the next table shared a laugh over scones, I allowed myself a quiet exhale. The game had changed, and I held the winning hand. One more quip to ease the tension. What's an eviction notice's favorite song? Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing on the cafe table, vibrating insistently like a trapped insect desperate to escape. Daniel's name flashed across the screen again and again, each call a stab of anticipation mixed with dread. The cafe around me carried on obliviously the clatter of cutlery on plates, the low hum of chatter, the rich scent of freshly ground coffee weaving through the air like an invisible thread. Steam rose from abandoned mugs, curling lazily in the sunlight streaming through the window, warming my skin where it touched. For a long moment, I just stared at the device, my hands trembling slightly against the wooden surface, scarred from years of spills and wipes. I'd known this was coming. Lisa had warned me, but facing it felt like stepping into a ring I hadn't chosen. Part of me, the soft-hearted mum who'd bandaged his scraped knees and read him stories until my voice grew hoarse, wanted to answer, to hear that boyish tone break through, admitting fault, begging forgiveness. But another part, hardened by last night's betrayal and this morning's resolve, knew better. It wouldn't be remorse, it would be rage, accusations hurled like stones. Still, curiosity, or perhaps that lingering maternal bond won out. On the sixth ring, I picked up, my finger sliding across the screen with deliberate slowness. "Hello," I said, my voice emerging flat and steady, belying the pounding in my chest. "Mom," he snapped immediately. No warmth, no pause, just pure fury crackling through the line like static on an old radio. "What the hell have you done?" I closed my eyes briefly, letting his anger wash over me, a wave I refused to let pull me under. The cafe's ambient noise faded to a distant buzz, the barista calling an order, a chair scraping across the floor as I focused on his breathing, heavy and ragged. "What do you mean?" I asked quietly. Playing for time, though we both knew the game. "Don't play dumb," he shouted, so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear, glancing around to see if anyone noticed. A couple at the next table looked up briefly, then returned to their pastries. A lawyer just showed up with some nonsense about the house not being ours, that it belongs to this Lisa person. "Is this your idea of a joke?" I exhaled slowly, gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles ached, the wood grain pressing into my skin like a reminder of solidity. "It's not a joke, Daniel," I said calmly, my tone measured, almost detached. There was a pause on his end, just his labored breaths filling the silence. Then an explosion. "You did this. You went behind my back and stole my house from me." His house. The words landed like a blow, sharp and echoing. "Your house," I repeated, my voice shaking now, but sharpening like a blade. "Daniel, that house was mine long before Emma even entered the picture. I built it with my hands, my sweat, after your father died." He scoffed, the sound bitter and dismissive. "Ours. Then, Emma and I, we planned our future there. And now you've ruined it all. Do you even care what you've done to us?" The irony burned, hot as the coffee I'd let go cold. "What I've done to you," my voice cracked on the edge, then hardened, steel forging in fire. "You stood in my kitchen yesterday and told me to go to hell. Daniel, you watched while Emma treated me like dirt. And you kicked me out because her family needed it more. And now you're angry because you can't take what isn't yours." He cursed under his breath, a muffled word that stung but didn't surprise. "Steal? Are you mad? You owe me. Mum, I'm your son." That word son snapped something deep inside, a dam breaking on a flood of memories, his tiny hand in mine on the way to school. The nights I'd sewn costumes from scraps because we couldn't afford shop-bought ones. The years I'd given every scrap of myself to ensure he never wanted. "I owe you nothing," I said, each syllable deliberate and sharp. "You're a grown man now. Daniel, you made your choice when you let her speak to me like I was nothing. When you told me to get out of the home I bled for." He started to interrupt, his voice rising again. But I cut him off, the words pouring out like long-held rain. "You know what hurts most? It's not the house. It's losing the son I thought I raised, the one who knew right from wrong." Silence stretched on the line, thick and heavy, broken only by what might have been a hitch in his breath. For a split second, hope flickered. Maybe regret was dawning. But then he came back harder, his tone ice cold. Fine. If you want a war, you've got one. The line went dead before I could respond, the abrupt beep echoing in my ear like a door slamming shut. I sat frozen, staring at the black screen, my hands still clutching the phone as if it could hold back the ache blooming in my chest. The cafe swam back into focus. The scent of vanilla from a nearby latte, the soft clink of spoons stirring sugar, life ticking on while mine felt pause. My throat burned, tears pricking at my eyes, but I blinked them away, refusing to let them fall here, among strangers. A bitter, broken laugh escaped me then, tasting of iron and regret. He still didn't get it. Did he? Thought this was a skirmish he could win with bluster and threats. But he'd underestimated me, just as he'd overlooked the love that had built our world, joked to lighten the load. What do you call a phone call from a wayward son? A ring of fire hot, but ultimately going nowhere. I set the phone down slowly, my fingers trembling, and took a deep breath, the air cool and grounding. The confrontation had been inevitable, a storm cloud bursting, but now the air felt clearer, if raw. Guilt nipped at me. This was my boy. After all, but it mingled with a steely calm. He'd declared war, but I held the high ground. The law my ally, as I signaled for a fresh coffee. The barista's smile warm and unwitting. I pondered his words. War, perhaps, but wars have casualties, and I wasn't about to be one. The rest of the morning blurred in the cafe's rhythm, people filtering in for lunch, the sun shifting to cast golden pools on the floor. My mind replayed the call, dissecting each barb, but beneath the hurt lay resolve. He'd twisted it all, making me the villain in his narrative. But facts don't bend to entitlement. Lisa texted soon after, heard the fallout. Stay strong. We've got this. Her words were a balm, reminding me I wasn't alone. By afternoon, as I nursed my second cup, the bitterness fading to something manageable, I felt the shift complete. No more victim. I was the architect of my fate now. Daniel's threats echoed hollow. What war could he wage without ground to stand on? Another quip. Why did the son declare war on his mum? Because he forgot who taught him to fight fair. Laughter bubbled up, soft and sardonic, easing the tension, leaving the cafe. The bell jingling behind me, I stepped into the daylight. The breeze carrying hints of rain. The path ahead was uncertain, but my steps were sure. He'd wanted a battle, now he'd learned the cost. And me, I'd weather it. As always, with that quiet strength forged in fire. I thought Daniel's call was the nadir of it all, the deepest cut in a day already laced with wounds. But I was mistaken. That evening, as the sun dipped low, painting Linda's living room in hues of amber and shadow, my phone kept vibrating on the side table, a persistent tremor that set my nerves on edge. The room smelled of chamomile tea, steaming gently from the mug Linda had pressed into my hands, its floral notes mingling with the faint mustiness of her well-loved bookshelves. I tried to relax, sinking into the sofa's plush cushions, the fabric soft against my back. But peace eluded me like a dream half-remembered. When Linda entered the room, her face drained of color, holding her mobile like it was a venomous thing, I knew another blow was coming. "You need to see this," she said quietly, her voice a hush that matched the ticking clock on the mantel. She handed me the screen, and my heart plummeted. There it was, a Facebook post from Emma, her profile picture beaming with that polished smile, the kind that hides sharper edges. The caption twisted like a knife. "My cruel mother-in-law has kicked us out, with a baby on the way. We have nowhere to go. How can someone be so heartless?" Below it, hundreds of comments unfurled like weeds in a neglected garden, strangers piling on with vitriol that made my stomach churn. I whispered, "She's made me the villain," my voice breaking as I scrolled. The screen's glow harsh against the dimming light. Comments flooded in. "How could a mother do this to her own son? Shame on her." Another, "What a selfish old hag. If she were my mum, I'd disown her too." Threats mingled with the hate. Anonymous barbs from keyboards. Warriors who'd never met me, painting me as a monster while Emma played the damsel. My hands shook, the phone slippery in my grip. As I read on, each word a pinprick building to a torrent, Linda touched my arm, her fingers warm and grounding. "Don't read them. Love. It's not worth the anguish." But I couldn't stop, drawn like a moth to the flame. The cafe's earlier calm felt worlds away. Now, humiliation burned hot in my cheeks. Emma had twisted the narrative, omitting her smirks. Daniel's cold dismissal, our history, and buried in the post, a line that froze my blood. We were planning to fix up the house and maybe sell it to start our new life. Sell it, my home, the one I'd mortgaged my soul for, reduced to a flip for their gain. That wasn't just betrayal, it was calculated theft. Greed wrapped in victimhood. My sadness ignited into rage, swift as a match to dry tinder. All those tears I'd shed for Daniel, the boy I'd nurtured through scraped knees and broken dreams, evaporated in the heat. This wasn't about a roof anymore, it was war on my dignity. Broadcast for the world to judge, I tossed the phone onto the cushion, pressing my hands to my face. The skin clammy and trembling, doubt crept in like evening shadows. Had I gone too far? Should I have swallowed my pride and walked away quietly? Was I the monster they claimed? But then logic pierced the fog. Emma's post was ammunition, not defeat. I grabbed my mobile and dialed Lisa, the ringtone cutting through the quiet room like a lifeline. She answered on the first ring, her voice steady as ever. "You've seen the post," she said, not a question, but knowing. "Lisa," I whispered, anger shaking my words now, not fear. "She says they plan to sell my house, take everything." "I know," she replied, calm as a still pond. And that's precisely what we needed. Admitting intent to sell property they don't own. That's fraud. Plain and simple. Our case just got 10 times stronger. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone until it hurt. The plastic warm against my palm. "I want to end this. Lisa, no more warnings, no second chances. I want them out of my life for good." She didn't hesitate. "Then we proceed. I'll draft the paperwork tonight. Meet me at the office tomorrow." The call ended, leaving the room silent, save for the distant hum of traffic outside. Headlights flashing through the curtains like fleeting ghosts. I stared at the wall, my heartbeat a drum in my ears. Steady and fierce. Emma thought she'd humiliated me, rallying the online mob to her side. But she'd overlooked one thing: I faced humiliation before widowhood's lonely sting, scraping by on pennies while raising a son alone. Life had kicked me down, but I'd always risen, dusted off, and carried on. Now, I wasn't just rising, I was charging back, armed with truth and the law. A bitter whisper escaped me. "You wanted a war. Emma, you've got one." As the room fell deeper into dusk, Linda brewing another tea, its steam rising like sighs. I opened Facebook one last time. Emma's smiling photo mocked me, but I memorized that smug expression, vowing it would soon fade, joked to ease the bile. What do you call a viral post full of lies? A fiber optic cable spreading falsehoods at the speed of light. Sleep that night was fitful. The guest bed sheets twisting around me like doubts. The pillow muffling half-formed sobs. But morning brought clarity. The sun filtering through blinds and golden slats, warming the floorboards underfoot. I dressed with purpose. The gray jumper from yesterday feeling like armor now, its wool soft yet unyielding. At Lisa's office, the air smelled of fresh paper and coffee, her desk cluttered with files that whispered of battles won. We reviewed the post's implications. Emma's admission turning their eviction into potential charges. Fraud intent, Lisa explained, her pen tapping rhythmically. They'll face court if they push. I nodded, the weight shifting from burden to power. By afternoon, back at Linda's, the online storm raged on, notifications pinging like rain on a tin roof. But I muted them, focusing inward. Emma's ploy had backfired. Her words were evidence, not weapons. As evening fell, the sky bruising purple, I felt the tide turn. No more tears for them, only forward motion. Another quip. Why did the social media post go to therapy? It had too many unresolved issues, and now, legal ones too. The days blurred then, paperwork mounting, but my resolve held firm. They'd tried to erase me, but I'd rewrite the ending. And deep down, amid the hurt, a quiet satisfaction bloomed like finding a $5 in an old coat pocket. Unexpected but welcome. One more lighthearted aside. What's a mother-in-law's favorite online game? Whack-a-troll dealing with comments, one block at a time. The morning after signing those papers felt like emerging from a fog, the world sharper around the edges, colors brighter yet somehow more stark. I sat in Linda's kitchen, the sun streaming through the window, in warm beams that caught the dust motes, dancing lazily in the air, like tiny sprites indifferent to my turmoil. The scent of fresh toast lingered from breakfast, buttery and comforting, mingling with the earthy aroma of my cooling tea, my hands wrapped around the mug, the ceramic smooth and grounding, but inside, a storm-brewed guilt warring with justification, love clashing against betrayal. Daniel's text from yesterday still glowed unread on my phone, a silent plea that tugged at the frayed threads of my heart. We have nowhere to go. The words echoed, but so did his go to hell, a counterweight keeping me steady. Lisa had promised the escalation would hit hard, and as I sipped my tea, the bitterness mirroring my mood, I pondered what fraud charges truly meant. Not just eviction, but a legal hammer falling fines that could cripple, a record staining their futures like ink on fresh linen. For Emma, with her polished online facade, it would be a public unraveling. For Daniel, my boy who'd once dreamed of being an architect building homes, not tearing them down, it might be the wake-up call he needed, or the breaking point. The kitchen clock ticked softly, each second a reminder that time waited for no one's regrets. My phone buzzed Lisa again, her voice a steady lifeline when I answered. The officers delivered the final notice, she said. No preamble, her tone crisp as autumn leaves. They're reeling. Emma's apparently in tears. Daniel pacing like a caged lion. I close my eyes, picturing it the door opening to that uniformed figure, papers thrust forward like a gauntlet. Emma's face crumpling, her usual smirk dissolving into shock, perhaps clutching her belly dramatically for that baby on the way she'd weaponized online. Daniel snatching the documents, his eyes scanning frantically, voice rising in denial. This is madness. Fraud. We were just planning ahead, but planning on stolen ground is theft. Plain as day. Joke 1. What do you call a couple scheming to sell what's not theirs? Real estate agents in denial. Tell me more, I murmured, leaning against the counter, the granite cool under my elbow. Lisa chuckled lowly, a sound that eased the knot in my chest. He's blustering about countersuits, but they've no legs to stand on. The Post sealed it, intent clear as crystal. Court's next if they push, but I reckon they'll fold. We discussed the nuts and bolts potential hearings in the local magistrate's court, where evidence like Emma's admission would shine damningly under scrutiny. It's not revenge, Lisa assured, echoing my thoughts. It's protection. You've every right after what they pulled. Hanging up. I felt the weight shift further from victim to vindicator. But doubt lingered, a whisper in the quiet kitchen. Was this too far, destroying my son's life over a house? Yet it wasn't just bricks, it was principle. The erasure of my sacrifices. I'd added creative safeguards in those papers too, clauses ensuring any sale proceeds, if it came to that, funneled back to me. A quiet invention, born of sleepless nights, plotting contingencies. I'd even included a provision for mediation if they showed genuine remorse, an olive branch hidden in legalese, because despite everything, a mother's heart doesn't fully harden. Afternoon brought a walk in Linda's garden, the grass damp underfoot from morning dew, birds chirping overhead and the branches heavy with leaves. The air carried the fresh scent of soil and blooming roses, their petals soft as I brushed past. It cleared my head, steps measured and thoughtful. Back inside, I delved into research, poring over old emails from Lisa, reminders of why we'd escalated. Emma's post hadn't just slandered, it confessed, turning their greed into Exhibit A. Creative addition, I'd imagined confronting them in court, my voice steady as I recounted the years of support, the double jobs that left me bone-weary, all for Daniel's sake. But reality might be quieter settlements, apologies forced by circumstance. By evening, as shadows lengthened across the lawn visible from the window, another call came, unknown number. But I knew, Daniel. I let it ring twice, then answered, the line crackling slightly. Mom, he said, voice hoarse, a far cry from yesterday's rage. Please, you've got to stop this. Fraud charges. Emma's hysterical. We didn't mean to what? I interrupted softly. Sitting at the table, the wood grain under my fingers, a tactile anchor. Sell my home out from under me. Kick me to the curb for her folks. He sighed, heavy and defeated. It wasn't like that. We were thinking of the future. The baby. You transferred it behind our backs. That's sneaky. Sneaky. The hypocrisy stung. Protecting what's mine isn't sneaky. Daniel, assuming it's yours is entitlement. I added, remember when you were little and we'd build forts from blankets? That house was our fort. I built it alone after Dad. You can't just claim it. Silence, then a hitch in his breath. I'm sorry. Okay, but this could ruin us. Call it off. My heart ached, tears pricking, but resolve held. Apologies don't erase actions. Face the consequences. I hung up, the click final. The room suddenly too quiet. Night fell, Linda joining me for tea, her presence a balm. We talked lightly weather, telly, but undercurrents ran deep. You're doing right, she said, squeezing my hand. Sleep came in fits, dreams of courtrooms blending with childhood memories, but morning renewed purpose. Lisa updated charges filed. Hearing set. They'd scramble now, perhaps seek counsel. but options dwindled. Joke 2. What's a fraud charge's favorite game? Hide and seek, but the truth always finds you. Weeks blurred in legal haze. Affidavits stacking like autumn leaves. Creative edition. I volunteered at a local shelter, helping others displaced, finding solace in giving what I'd lost stability. It healed fractions, reminding me strength lay in perseverance. One day, a letter arrived, their solicitor proposing settlement, vacate immediately, drop charges for a nominal fine. Lisa advised acceptance, but with my twist no contact clause for a year. Time to heal. Signing felt like closing a chapter, ink drying on fresh wounds. But Emma pushed back online. Another post decrying injustice, rallying more hate. It backfired, commenters questioning her narrative. The tide shifted, my silence speaking volumes. As rain pattered against the window one evening, I reflected escalation wasn't vengeance, it was equilibrium. They'd tipped the scales, now balanced. Joke 3. Why did the legal action go to therapy? It had too many charges to process. The path ahead loomed, but I walked it head high, the house a symbol reclaimed, my life mine again. 2 weeks had slipped by since that fateful signing in Lisa's office. Each day a blend of quiet tension and mundane routine at Linda's. I'd taken to morning walks along the nearby canal, the water's surface rippling gently under the breeze, carrying the fresh scent of moss and distant rain. Ducks quacked softly, their paddles creating tiny waves that lapped against the banks. A rhythmic sound that mirrored my steadying heartbeat. The air was crisp, nipping at my cheeks, but it cleared the cobwebs in my mind, allowing me to process the whirlwind without drowning in it. Back home, Linda's home. That is, I'd busy myself with small tasks, folding laundry with deliberate creases, the fabric soft and warm from the dryer, or brewing tea that steamed up the kitchen window, fogging the glass like breath on a cold day. But on this particular morning, as I sat in the living room amid stacks of neatly ironed clothes, a news alert pinged on my phone, jolting me like a splash of cold water. I thought it might be another barrage of online bile, strangers still echoing Emma's narrative. But no, this was different. The headline stared back, local couple under investigation for attempted real estate fraud. My hands froze mid-fold, the shirt crumpling in my lap as I read on, the words blurring slightly under the room's soft lamplight. There they were, Daniel and Emma's names in stark black and white, accompanied by their wedding photo pulled straight from Facebook, no doubt smiling obliviously at the camera. The article detailed it all, attempts to claim and sell property not theirs, the rightful owner's legal action through a trust, mentions of fines and probation if charges held. I whispered, God, Daniel, what have you wrought? The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker, scented with the faint lavender from the fabric softener clinging to the laundry. My breath came shaky, a mix of vindication and sorrow twisting in my chest like vines around a fence. This was the fruition of our escalation. The fraud intent from Emma's post, now public fodder. I'd pushed for anonymity in the filings, but leaks happened, perhaps a nosy neighbor or court clerk. And now their dreams lay exposed, tarnished for all to see. The phone buzzed again, and I didn't need to glance to know it was him. I swiped to voicemail, but the message arrived instantly. His voice hoarse and panicked through the speaker. Mum, please, they're talking about jail time. Emma's in pieces. We don't know what to do. I'm begging you. Call me back. My chest tightened, hand pressing against it as if to hold the ache in. For a moment, guilt surged like a tide. This was my flesh and blood. The lad who'd once built Lego towers in this very living room, his giggles filling the space now silent. But this wasn't my creation. It was the echo of their choices. Emma's greed amplifying Daniel's weakness. Lisa had warned cooperate, and it's fines. Probation at worst. Fight, and it deepens. They'd fought. Of course, countersuits threatened. But flimsy as wet paper. I called Lisa instead, her voice a calm harbor as always. You've seen the news, she asked, the clack of her keyboard faint in the background. I have, I said quietly, unfolding the shirt absently, the creases smoothing under my fingers. It feels odd, not triumphant, just final. You're human, she replied softly. It's your son. But remember, this is justice, not spite. You protected yourself. Will they face jail? I asked, the word heavy on my tongue. Not likely if they play ball, heavy fine. Probation. A lesson etched deep. We discussed next steps, their solicitor reaching out for settlement talks, my added clause for no contact holding firm. Creative addition. I'd insisted on a charity donation from any fines to a housing aid group. Ironic, given their attempt to displace me. but a way to turn poison into purpose. As we spoke, another message from Daniel lit the screen. I'm sorry. Mom, I messed up everything. The words blurred, my throat tightening with that old maternal pull. Sorry, too late, buried under layers of hurt. I didn't reply, setting the phone down, wiping my hands on my jeans as if to shed the residue. The afternoon dragged, laundry forgotten as I paced, the floorboards creaking softly underfoot. Outside, clouds gathered, their shadows dappling the garden. A prelude to rain that pattered against the panes by evening. Linda returned, sensing my mood, brewing cocoa that filled the air with chocolate's rich warmth. It'll pass, she said, her hug enveloping like a blanket. But pass to what? I envisioned their scrambled packing boxes in haste, Emma's tears staining cardboard, Daniel's regrets surfacing in quiet moments. Perhaps he'd find that old photo album, flip through pages of us at the seaside, his hand in mine, and wonder where it went wrong. Or maybe not entitlement blinds deep. Night brought fitful sleep, dreams of courtrooms morphing into childhood kitchens. But dawn renewed. The news had spread locally. Whispers at the shops when I ventured out for milk. The cashier's sympathetic glance. Heard about that couple. Shocking. In it. I'd nod, silent, the milk's chill seeping through the carton into my palm. Joke 1. What do you call a news alert on fraud? A headline case straight to the point. No bail. Weeks later, settlement papers arrived, their signatures shaky on the scan Lisa emailed. They'd vacated, paid a fine redirected to charity per my twist. Probation looming like a shadow. No jail, but lessons hard learned. Emma's online presence silenced. Her family's boastful posts vanished. Relief washed over me. Quiet as the canal's flow. Not joy, but balance restored. Creative addition. I visited the house then, key in hand after Lisa's transfer back, the door creaking open to empty rooms, echoing with ghosts. Dust motes danced in sunlight, the air stale but mine. I wandered, fingers trailing walls I'd painted, memories flooding Daniel's laughter, husband's touch. Tears came then, cleansing, as I planned redecoration, a fresh start. But Daniel's messages persisted, apologies, evolving to please. Can we talk? One read. I hovered, then archived, whispering. Not yet. The bond frayed, but perhaps mendable in time. Joke 2. Why did the settlement go to the pub? To raise the bar on accountability. Life ticked on, volunteering expanded. New friends at the shelter sharing stories that mirrored mine. Healing in solidarity. The fraud shadow faded, but lessons lingered. Trust carefully. Protect fiercely. One evening, rain lashing windows, I sat with wine, the glass cool in hand, reflecting. They'd thought me disposable, now they knew resilience's face. I started a journal, words flowing like therapy, chronicling the journey from betrayal to empowerment, perhaps one day a book anonymous, to help others. Joke 3. What's a mother's favorite fraud prevention? A trust fund of wisdom, not cash. As stars peeked through clearing clouds, peace settled, fragile but real. The chapter closed, but the story mine continued. The ink had barely dried on those papers when the reality of it all began to sink in deeper, like roots pushing through soil after a long drought. I woke that next day in Linda's guest room, the sunlight filtering through the thin curtains in soft, diffused beams that warmed the quilt draped over me. The air carried a faint scent of fresh linen, and the distant aroma of coffee brewing downstairs. A comforting ritual in an otherwise unsettled world. My body felt heavy, as if the weight of the previous day's decisions had settled into my bones overnight. But my mind was clearer, sharper, like a blade honed by necessity. Signing had been a cathartic release, yet it lingered a mix of empowerment and that nagging maternal guilt, whispering questions in the quiet moments. Was this the right path? Could I have forgiven without the law's heavy hand? I dressed slowly, slipping into familiar clothes that felt like armor now, the fabric brushing my skin with a reassuring softness. Downstairs, Linda had left a note and a pot of tea, steam rising in lazy curls that fogged the kitchen window slightly. The scent of bergamot grounding me as I poured a cup. The steam warmed my face, a small comfort as I reflected on the escalation. Fraud charges weren't just words on paper. They were a chain reaction, potentially chaining Daniel and Emma to consequences they'd never anticipated, court appearances in stuffy rooms, judges' gavels echoing like final judgments, fines that could drain what little they had. But Lisa had assured me it's measured, not malice, and deep down, I knew it was protection, a shield forged from their own greed. My phone buzzed on the table. pulling me from my thoughts, Lisa. Her timing as impeccable as ever. The final notice is being delivered today, she said, her voice steady through the speaker, the faint hum of her office in the background. With the fraud angle attached, it's no longer just eviction. They're looking at real scrutiny now. I nodded to myself, gripping the mug tighter, the heat seeping into my palms. And if they fight, they might try, she replied with a soft chuckle. But evidence like Emma's post is damning. Intent to sell what's not yours. That's the nail in the coffin. Meet me later if you need to talk it through. Ending the call, I felt a surge of resolve, mingled with that persistent ache. My house would soon be empty of them. But the void they'd left in my heart remained. Oh, fill it. I'd started small rituals, like journaling in the evenings, words flowing onto pages scented with ink, chronicling not just the betrayal, but the strength I'd rediscovered. It was therapeutic, turning pain into prose. Perhaps one day sharing anonymously to help others navigating similar storms. Afternoon brought me to Lisa's office again, the building's lobby cool and echoing, my footsteps soft on the tiled floor. She slid more documents across her desk, the paper crisp under my fingers, detailing the charge's progression. This formalizes it, she explained, her eyes meeting mine with quiet empathy. They'll receive it soon, eviction with fraud investigation attached. No turning back. As I left, the sun dipping lower, casting long shadows across the car park. My phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. I opened it in the car, the engine idling with a low purr, the dashboard lights glowing softly. Please, Mum, don't do this. We have nowhere else to go. Daniel's words, raw and pleading, hit like a wave, my vision blurring with hot tears. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, 1,000 responses flashing forgiveness, anger, questions. Part of me yearned to type back, to bridge the chasm, but memories surged, his cold eyes in the kitchen, Emma's mocking laugh, the door shutting on my life while they celebrated. I locked the screen without replying, whispering to the empty air, you should have considered that before. The point of no return felt crossed, the road ahead irreversible, but necessary. Driving back to Linda's. The road's quiet save for the occasional whoosh of passing cars. I pondered the pleading text. It wasn't the first voicemails had piled up, his voice cracking with desperation, but this one pierced deeper post-signing, creative addition. Perhaps he was realizing now, amid packing boxes and Emma's hysterics, the cost of his choices. I'd imagined him alone in a rented flat, staring at walls bare of family photos, regret gnawing like a persistent ache. Evening fell softly, the sky bruising purple as I sat in the garden, the grass cool under my feet, birds settling in the trees with faint chirps. Linda joined me with wine, the glasses clinking gently, the liquid's deep red catching the fading light. You're strong, she said, her hand on my arm, warm and reassuring. We talked little of it, instead sharing lighter tales, old holidays, silly mishaps, but undercurrents ran deep. Her support a silent fortress. Sleep that night was restless, the bed sheets twisting around me like unresolved thoughts. But dawn brought renewal. The fraud investigation loomed larger in my mind, a tool not of destruction but deterrence. Lisa updated via text. Their scrambling solicitor contacted for talks. Settlement whispers began, their side offering to vacate swiftly if charges dropped. But my added clauses held fines to charity. No contact for months, a buffer to heal. Joke 1. What do you call a pleading text from a wayward son? A message in a battle full of regrets, but arriving late, days blurred in anticipation, the legal machine grinding forward. I volunteered at a community center, helping elders with paperwork, their stories mirroring mine, betrayals by kin. Resilience in age, it healed fractions, reminding me I wasn't alone. My experience is a bridge to empathy. One afternoon, another text, Mum, talk to me. This is ruining us. I stared at it over lunch, the sandwich dry in my mouth, but archived it unanswered. Forgiveness might come, but not yet, not while wounds festered. As rain began to patter against the window that evening, soft and insistent, I reflected on the filing's impact. It wasn't vengeance, it was reclamation, turning their plot against me into my safeguard. Joke 2. Why did the legal papers go on a diet? To cut down on the charges, but these ones stuck. The path twisted, but I walked it steadily. The pleading text, a reminder of what was lost, yet what I'd gained, self-respect, unyielding. Creative addition. I started painting again. Canvases splashed with colors bold and defiant. Abstracts of turmoil turning to triumph. Each brushstroke a therapy. The oil's scent filling the spare room. A new chapter in strokes. Joke 3. What's a mother's response to a pleading text? Selective hearing with a side of tough love. By week's end, settlement talks advanced, their concessions mounting. The end neared, not with fanfare, but quiet justice. And me, I stood taller. The suitcase's weight a distant memory. My life reshaping in hands that were mine alone. 2 weeks had passed since I'd put pen to those damning papers. Each day blending into the next like watercolors on a rainy canvas. Soft and indistinct, yet heavy with anticipation. I was in my well. Linda's living room, folding laundry on the sofa. The fabric warm from the tumble dryer. Carrying that clean, cottony scent that always reminded me of simpler times. The rhythmic crease and stack was meditative. The soft thud of clothes piling up a counterpoint to the quiet hum of the radio in the background. Playing some old ballad about lost love, my hands moved automatically, smoothing out wrinkles as if I could iron away the creases in my own life. But then my phone buzzed sharply on the coffee table, shattering the calm, a news alert popping up like an uninvited guest. At first, I braced for more online venom, another wave of comments branding me the villain in Emma's scripted drama. But this was different. The headline glaring in bold local couple probed for attempted real estate fraud. My fingers froze mid-fold, the shirt slipping from my grasp as I snatched the phone, heart thudding like a drum in a silent room. There they were, Daniel and Emma's names etched in digital ink, alongside that wedding photo from Facebook. Their smiles frozen in irony. Oblivious to the storm they'd brewed, the article laid at bare efforts to sell a property they had no right to. The owner's swift legal counter through a trust setup. Whispers of fines and probation if the charges stuck. I read every line slowly. The screen's glow harsh against the room's soft lamplight. My breath catching on details I'd known. But seeing public felt surreal. God, what have you done? Daniel, I whispered to the empty air, the words hanging heavy, mingling with the faint scent of lavender from the fabric softener. The room felt colder suddenly, shadows lengthening as the afternoon sun dipped behind clouds outside the window. This was the culmination. The fraud intent from Emma's post now splashed across local news for neighbors, friends, everyone to dissect. I'd anticipated leaks, perhaps from court gossip or a prying reporter, but seeing it manifest twisted the knife. Their private shame now public spectacle, much like they'd tried to make mine. The phone buzzed again, insistent as a fly at a picnic, and I didn't need to check Daniel. I swiped to voicemail, but the message poured through anyway, his voice hoarse and fractured, like gravel underfoot. Mom, please, they're mentioning jail. Emma's sobbing, we're lost. Begging you, ring back. My chest constricted, hand pressing against it as if to staunch a wound, the ache blooming fresh and raw. Guilt pricked sharp. This was my son, the one who'd once drawn me crayon hearts, his tiny arms hugging tight after nightmares. But consequences aren't undone by pleas. They'd sown this wind, now reaping the whirlwind. Lisa called moments later, her timing a lifeline as always. Her voice calm through the speaker amid the clatter of her office. Seen the news? She asked, the faint rustle of papers in the background. I have, I murmured, setting the laundry aside, the pile toppling slightly like my composure. Feels strange, not happy. Just waited. You're only human, she said softly, empathy threading her words. It's your lad, but don't mistake justice for vengeance. This safeguards you, and they've options if they cooperate. Jail. The word tasted bitter, like overbrewed tea, unlikely with compliance stiff fine. Probation, a hard lesson, but survivable. We chatted on potential outcomes hearings where evidence like the post would shine, settlements perhaps sweetened by my creative clauses, fines to housing charities, a poetic twist on their displacement bid, creative addition. I'd even floated a mediation session, post-probation, a neutral ground for airing grievances, because despite the hurt, a sliver of hope lingered for reconciliation, far off as it seemed. Hanging up, I stared at the muted telly, their names scrolling in the ticker like ghosts. Emma's Facebook had gone dark. No more curated perfection. Her family's flashy updates silenced by shame's shadow. Relief crept in, quiet as the rain starting outside, pattering against panes in a soothing rhythm. Not triumph, but equilibrium, the scales tipping back after their shove. Yet Daniel's message gnawed, desperate words replaying as I resumed folding, the fabric's warmth fading. I'm sorry. Mom, please. I messed up everything. The addendum hit harder, a crack in his armor. But apologies late, as autumn leaves don't change the season. Joke 1. What do you call a desperate voicemail from a prodigal son? A call to arms too late for the battle. Afternoon wore on, the rain intensifying, drumming a steady beat on the roof that matched my pondering steps around the house. I ventured out under an umbrella, the air fresh with petrichor, puddles reflecting gray skies as I walked to the local shop. Whispers followed. That's her. The mum in the news, but sympathy now, not scorn. The tide turned by facts emerging. Back home, I baked scones, the oven's heat filling the kitchen with buttery aroma, kneading dough as therapy, each push releasing tension. Evening brought Linda home, her umbrella dripping in the hall, scent of wet wool mingling with dinner's prep. We ate by candlelight, power flickering from the storm, the flames dancing shadows on walls. Conversation light but laced with support. They'll learn, she said, squeezing my hand across the table. Sleep evaded at first, rain lashing windows like accusations, but eventually claimed me. Dreams mixed news headlines with childhood picnics, Daniel's laughter echoing faint. Dawn broke clearer, sun-piercing clouds, and Lisa updated their solicitor pushing settlement, accepting fines, probation looming. My no-contact clause stood, a buffer for breathing. But messages persisted, Daniel's evolving to raw pleas, can we meet? I see now. Creative addition, I imagined him in a cramped flat, boxes unpacked haphazardly, staring at old photos, regret etching lines on his face. Perhaps therapy for them, unraveling Emma's influence, rebuilding what greed shattered. Joke 2. Why did the news article go viral? It had all the elements: drama, deceit, and a dash of family dysfunction. Weeks later, papers finalized. Charges sticking lightly: probation, community service. They complied, vanishing from my orbit. The house reclaimed. I redecorated slowly. Fresh paint's sharp scent symbolizing renewal. Walls echoing with potential, not pain. Healing crept in, volunteering expanded. Stories shared over tea at the center. Bonds formed in shared scars. I took up gardening. Hands in soil planting bulbs for spring blooms. Each seed, a promise of growth from fallow ground. Joke 3. What's probation's favorite hobby? Reflecting on choices, with a side of community service. As stars emerged that night, peace settled deeper, the desperate messages archived but not forgotten. The news had broken, but so had the cycle. I emerged whole. Story mine to tell. I sat alone in Linda's small kitchen, the hum of the fridge, a constant companion in the otherwise silent space, its low vibration echoing the unrest in my chest. The wall clock ticked softly, each second stretching like taffy, as I stared blankly at the patterned tiles, their cool surface reflecting the overhead light in faint glimmers. The air carried the faint scent of last night's dinner garlic, and herbs lingering like unspoken words, mixed with the sharp tang of lemon cleaner from my morning scrub. Laundry was done, dishes dried and stacked, but my mind was a tangle I couldn't tidy, thoughts knotting around Daniel's latest message. I'm sorry. Mum, I messed up everything. It had arrived last night, glowing on the screen like a wound reopening, and now, in the morning light filtering through the net curtains, it demanded attention. My fingers traced the table's wood grain, rough under my nails, as I let the words sink in. Sorry, such a small word for such a large rift. Part of me, the mother who'd kissed his bruises and cheered his triumphs, wanted to believe it, to rush back and wrap him in forgiveness like a warm blanket on a chilly evening. But another part, scarred by betrayal's fire, hesitated, the ache deep and unyielding. How had we spiraled from bedtime stories and birthday cakes to legal battles and news headlines? The kitchen felt smaller, walls closing in with memories, his tiny voice calling Mom. After a fall, now replaced by that cold go to hell, I whispered to myself, you should have said it sooner. The words tasting bitter, like oversteeped tea, left too long in the pot. The phone lay there, screen dark but accusatory. And I picked it up slowly, my hands trembling slightly against the cool glass. Scrolling back, his messages formed a timeline of desperation, from rage to please. Apologies evolving, like seasons turning. I see now what I did. One read, Emma pushed, but I let her. Forgive me. My throat tightened, tears burning hot behind my eyes, blurring the text. Forgiveness isn't that what mothers do? Absorb the hurts, mend the breaks. But this break ran deep, fracturing trust like a dropped vase, shards too sharp to handle barehanded. I dreamed last night of a reconciliation scene, us meeting in a neutral cafe, the air thick with coffee's robust aroma, and the clink of cups, his eyes meeting mine with genuine remorse. "Mom, I was blind," he'd say, voice cracking, and I'd reach across, but wakefulness brought reality, no such meeting yet, just texts in the void. To Bridget, I'd started drafting a letter, words on paper scented with ink, pouring out the pain without accusation. A mother's olive branch wrapped in caution. A knock at the door jolted me, Linda, back early from her walk, her cheeks flushed from the crisp air outside, carrying a bag of fresh bread that filled the room with yeasty warmth. "You all right?" "Love," she asked, setting it down, her eyes searching mine with that quiet concern. I showed her the message, the screen lighting up again like a beacon. "He's sorry now," I said, voice soft but edged with sarcasm. "Funny how consequences sharpen the mind, isn't it?" She nodded, slicing the bread with a serrated knife, the crust crackling under the blade. "Respond if you're ready, but on your terms." I pondered that over a slice, butter melting into the warm crumb, its richness comforting on my tongue. Internal conflict, raged reply, and risk reopening wounds, or silence as armor. The original hurt pulsed his entitlement, Emma's venom, but his apologies chipped at it, revealing the boy beneath the man. Joke 1. What do you call an apology from a son who's seen the light? An air-raising moment finally growing up. Afternoon sunlight shifted, casting golden pools on the floor as I sat by the window. Phone in hand, I typed drafts, deleting each too late. Gone. "I love you, but..." Erased. Finally, something stuck. "I'll always love you, but I can't save you from yourself." My finger hovered over send, heart pounding like footsteps on stairs. Before pressing it, the message whooshed away, leaving silence heavier than before. His reply came swift. "Thank you. Can we talk soon?" No demands, just hope. It softened me slightly, the internal tug of war easing a fraction. Creative Edition, I imagined our first call post this, voices tentative over the line, static crackling like nerves, rebuilding brick by verbal brick. But for now, space, my no-contact clause, unnecessary pause, breathing room in the storm's aftermath. Evening brought rain, pattering softly against the panes like fingertips tapping impatience, the sky darkening to match my mood. Linda and I shared supper stew simmering on the stove, its hearty aroma filling the house with meaty warmth and herbs. Conversation flowed, lighter telly shows, neighborhood gossip, but under it, my reflections simmered. Apologies don't erase scars, but they can start healing, like balm on a burn. Yet trust rebuilds slowly, stone by stone. Sleep came in waves that night, the bed's mattress yielding softly, sheets cool against my skin. Dreams wove apologies into reconciliations. Daniel at the door with flowers, their petals soft and fragrant, but morning dispelled them. Lisa updated probation terms accepted, fines paid to charity per my twist housing aid. Ironic justice. "They're complying," she said. Your response set boundaries, emboldened. I volunteered more at the center, leading a group session on family riffs, voices sharing around a circle of chairs, coffee's steam rising in solidarity. My story, anonymized, inspired nods, healing mutual. It reframed my conflict, not isolation, but shared human frailty. Another message arrived midday, I understand. "Love you." Simple, but it thawed a bit more. Joke 2. What's a mother's heart like after apologies? A melting pot stirred, but not yet set. Weeks unfolded. Reflections deepening in quiet moments walks by the river. Waters murmur soothing. Leaves rustling overhead in autumn's breeze. Internal battles waned. Apologies acknowledged, if not fully embraced. The bond, frayed, might mend with time. Threads rewoven carefully. But for now, I held firm, responding sparingly. Each word weighed like gold. Creative Edition, I took up knitting, needles clicking rhythmically, yarn soft in my hands, creating scarves as metaphors warming but earned. Joke 3. Why did the apology go to school? To learn its lesson better late than never. As stars twinkled outside, peace edged closer, the conflict storm subsiding to drizzles. Apologies were steps, but the journey mine, paced at my rhythm. I sat alone in the small kitchen at Linda's, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence like a distant lullaby, its steady vibration resonating through the floorboards under my feet. The walls stared back at me blankly, its cream paint chipped in places from years of gentle wear. and I traced the patterns with my eyes, lost in thought as the afternoon light slanted through the window, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the tiled floor. The air was thick with the scent of cooled tea leaves from my untouched mug, bitter and herbal, mingling with the faint mustiness of the wooden table where my hands rested. Palms down, feeling the grain's subtle roughness. Laundry folded, dishes done, but my mind a whirlwind I couldn't tidy, swirling with Daniel's message from last night. I'm sorry. Mom, I messed up everything. The words echoed in my head, simple yet loaded, like a key turning in a long-locked door. My throat tightened, a lump forming as I whispered aloud, "You should have said that sooner." The sound of my voice felt foreign in the quiet space, bouncing off the walls like an unwelcome echo. How did we get here? From his chubby hands clutching mine on school runs, his laughter filling this very air during holidays, to headlines and heartaches. I pressed my fingers to my face, the skin warm and slightly clammy, feeling the sting behind my eyes, but refusing to let tears fall. Not yet, not over words that came too late, buried under layers of betrayal. The phone sat on the table, screen dark but taunting, and I picked it up slowly, my fingers trembling against the cool glass as if it might burn. Scrolling through his messages painted a picture of desperation, from initial fury to fractured pleas, apologies blooming like weeds after a storm. "I see what I did wrong now." One read, "Emma pushed, but I allowed it. Forgive me." "Mom," my chest ached with that familiar pull, the mother's instinct to mend, to absorb the pain like a sponge and squeeze out only love. But forgiveness isn't a switch, it's a path, rocky and slow, and this hurt ran deep, fracturing something fundamental, like a favorite mug dropped and glued back, always showing the cracks. In my dreams last night, I'd seen a different ending a cafe meeting, the air rich with the aroma of fresh pastries and steaming lattes, clinks of spoons stirring sugar in cups as he sat across, eyes meeting mine with genuine remorse. "Mom, I was a fool," he'd say, voice cracking like dry leaves underfoot. And I'd reach out, but waking brought the stark kitchen light, no such scene, just texts in the digital void. To grapple with it, I'd begun a journal, pages filled with inked reflections. The pen scratched soothing as I poured out the internal storm without judgment, a private dialogue with my heart. A soft knock at the door pulled me back, Linda, returning from her errands, her arms laden with shopping bags rustling like autumn leaves. She set them down on the counter, the thud muffled, and caught my expression immediately, her eyes softening with concern. "Still turning it over?" She asked, unpacking bread that released a yeasty warmth into the room, comforting as a hug. I showed her the message, the screen lighting up like a flare. "He's sorry now," I said, my tone laced with that light sarcasm I'd adopted as a shield. Funny how a spot of probation sharpens the regret, isn't it? Like suddenly remembering your manners after the party's over. She chuckled softly, slicing the bread with a steady hand. The knife's scrape against the board rhythmic and grounding. "Reply if it feels right. Love. But don't rush your heart spin through the ringer, over a slice slathered with butter, melting golden into the crumb." I pondered her words, the taste rich and simple on my tongue. The internal conflict raged like a debate in my head. Respond and risk vulnerability, or hold silence as a boundary. His apologies chipped at the walls I'd built, revealing glimpses of the boy I'd raised. But trust rebuilds slowly, brick by cautious brick. Joke 1. What do you call an apology from a son who's hit rock bottom? An air of desperation, finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel vision. Afternoon light shifted, warming the room in golden hues as I moved to the window, phone in hand, watching leaves swirl in the breeze outside, their rustle faint through the glass. I typed drafts, fingers hovering too little, too late, deleted. "I love you, but it hurts," erased. Finally, something resonated. "I'll always love you, but I can't save you from yourself." My thumb paused over send, heart fluttering like a trapped bird. Before pressing it, the message vanished into the ether, leaving a hollow quiet, the fridge's hum suddenly louder. His reply pinged almost immediately. "Thank you. I understand. Can we talk one day?" No push, just quiet hope. It softened the edges of my resolve, the conflict easing a notch, like a knot loosening in a taut rope. Creative edition. I envisioned that talk perhaps in a park, benches cool under us, birds chirping overhead, air fresh with grass clippings, voices tentative but honest, rebuilding what greed had torn. But for now, the no contact clause was my safeguard, a necessary pause in the narrative, giving wounds time to scar over without infection. Evening descended gently, the sky painting itself in purples and oranges as rain began to patter against the panes, soft and insistent like fingertips drumming thoughts. Linda prepared supper, the sizzle of onions in the pan filling the air with savory warmth, herbs wafting like a promise of comfort. We ate by the flickering light of a candle, its flame dancing shadows on the walls, conversation meandering to lighter shores, old films, neighborhood quirks, but my reflection simmered beneath. A pot on low heat. Apologies don't erase the past, but they can illuminate the future, like a lantern in fog, guiding if not fully illuminating. Sleep wrapped around me that night, the bed's mattress yielding softly, sheets cool and crisp against my skin, dreams weaving apologies into tentative reconciliations. Daniel at the door with a bouquet, petals soft and fragrant with remorse. But morning dispelled them, sunlight slanting through blinds and stripes across the floor. Lisa's update came via text over breakfast. Probation terms settled. They're adhering. Your boundaries are holding strong. Encouraged. I dove deeper into volunteering at the community center, facilitating talks on family estrangement. Circles of chairs filled with nodding heads over steaming mugs of tea. Stories shared in hushed tones that echoed my own. It transformed my conflict from isolation to connection. Healing in the act of helping. My experience is a bridge for others crossing similar chasms. Another message arrived midday. Thinking of you. Miss the old days. I read it over a sandwich, the bread's crust crunching softly, but pocketed the phone unanswered. Forgiveness brews slowly, like good tea rushed, and it's bitter. Joke 2. What's a mother's response to serial apologies? Selective service delivered with care, but not on demand. Weeks unfolded in this rhythm, reflections deepening during riverside walks, water murmuring secrets under bridges, leaves crunching underfoot in autumn's embrace. The internal battles quieted. Apologies acknowledged as steps on a long road, the bond frayed but not severed eternally. Yet I held firm, responses sparse, each word a measured gift. Creative addition, I took up pottery, hands shaping clay on the wheel, the wet earth's cool slip under my fingers, firing pieces into strength metaphors for my own reshaping, fragile to firm. Joke 3. Why did the reflection go to therapy? To mirror back the apologies clearly, without distortion, as twilight stars emerged, twinkling like distant hopes, peace inched closer. The apologies a balm on old wounds, my heart mending at its own pace. 6 months had glided by like leaves carried on a gentle stream, each day unfolding with a quiet rhythm that I'd come to cherish. Far removed from the storm that had upended my world, I woke to sunlight pouring into my small apartment by the ocean, the rays dancing across the wooden floorboards in warm, golden patterns, the distant crash of waves a soothing symphony that whispered through the open window, carrying the salty tang of sea air mingled with the fresh scent of morning dew on the sill. The bed's sheets were soft against my skin, crisp from line drying in the breeze yesterday, and I stretched slowly, feeling the knots of old tensions ease from my muscles like mist dissolving under the sun. This place wasn't grand, just a cozy one-bedroom with a view of the endless blue horizon, but it was mine. Rented with the proceeds from selling a few heirlooms I'd salvaged, a fresh start etched in every corner I'd personalized with thrift shop finds, and hand-sewn curtains fluttering lightly in the draft. Mornings were simple now, a ritual that grounded me sliding out of bed, the floor cool under my bare feet as I padded to the kitchen, where a basket of fresh bread waited on the counter, its crust still warm from the oven, releasing a yeasty aroma that filled the space with homely comfort. I'd bake it myself most days, kneading the dough with hands that no longer trembled. The rhythmic push and fold a meditation, flour dusting the air like soft snow. Coffee brewed next, the percolator gurgling softly, steam rising in lazy curls that fogged the window pane. The rich, dark scent blending with the ocean's brine wafting in. No more shouts echoing down hallways. No judgmental glares over breakfast, just me. The quiet hum of the fridge. And the wave's eternal murmur, a heartbeat that never faltered or betrayed. I opened the window wider, letting the breeze kiss my face, cool and invigorating, carrying hints of seaweed and distant gulls' cries that pierced the air like playful notes. Staring at the ocean, vast and shimmering under the azure sky, I whispered to myself, I survived. It wasn't a boast, just a quiet acknowledgement, the words tasting of salt and freedom on my tongue. The nights had been the hardest at first, rolling over to empty spaces where my husband once lay, now compounded by Daniel's absence, his shadow lingering like a half-forgotten dream. Sleepless hours replaying his words, Emma's smirks, the suitcase's weight, but gradually, I'd remind myself this was release, not loss. Holding on had been the true poison, slowly eroding my spirit, like waves wearing down cliffs. Pouring coffee into my chipped mug, the ceramic warm in my hands, I sat at the little table by the window, scrolling idly through my phone. No more frantic checks for hateful comments, just weather apps and recipes. Daniel hadn't called in months. His last message sitting unread after my measured reply that night. A boundary I'd set like a fence around a fragile garden. Sometimes I'd hover over it, tempted to reopen the wound, to type something bridging the gap. But then I'd recall the weight of loving those who loved conditionally. The exhaustion of one-sided efforts. It wasn't hate, it was self-preservation. A lesson learned the hard way, like touching a hot stove and finally heating the burn. My gaze drifted to the photograph on the wall, me and Daniel at 5, his arms wrapped tight around my neck, both grinning like the world was ours alone. The frame's wood smooth under my fingertips as I traced it. I'll always love you, I murmured. The words for him, even if unheard. A soft echo in the room. After breakfast, I tied my apron, the strings familiar around my waist, and started kneading dough for the bakery down the street where I worked part-time now. The flour sifted through my fingers like fine sand, the dough yielding under my palms, shaping into loaves that rose with promise. The oven's heat warming the kitchen like a gentle embrace. It was honest toil, smelling of yeast and accomplishment, giving me purpose when everything else had slipped away. By afternoon, the aroma filled the apartment, golden crusts cooling on racks, a quiet victory not over them, but over the doubt that had whispered I couldn't thrive alone. That part of me, the one convinced I needed their validation. Their presence was gone, dissolved like salt in the sea. I survived betrayal's bite, humiliation's sting, loneliness's chill, emerging with peace that wrapped around me softly, like the ocean's fog rolling in at dusk. Glancing out the window one last time, the sea sparkling under the golden sky, waves lapping rhythmically against the shore, I let out a breath that felt like true release. Goodbye. Daniel, I murmured softly, the words carried away on the breeze. Wherever you are, find your way. Then I turned back to the counter, brushed the flour from my hands with a satisfied pat, and smiled not for show, not for anyone else, but for me. For the first time in ages, my life was wholly mine again, and that sufficiency bloomed warm in my chest. To fill the days further, I'd taken up beachcombing, wandering the sands at low tide, the wet grain shifting under my toes, collecting shells that gleamed like treasures, their spirals echoing life's twists. Each find went into a jar on the shelf, a mosaic of resilience, reminders that beauty emerges from the tide's churn. Evenings, I'd read by lamplight, pages turning softly, stories of others' triumphs over adversity mirroring my own, the book's paper whispering as I turned each leaf. Joke 1. What do you call a new life by the sea? A sure thing finally on solid ground after the waves. The bakery shift passed in a blur of customers' smiles and the ring of the till, donuts glazing under my hands. The sweet sugar dusting the air like fairy dust. Home again, supper simple fish fresh from the market, grilled with herbs, the sizzle in the pan. A cheerful note, and then a walk along the shore as sunset painted the sky in pinks and oranges. The water's edge foaming gently around my ankles, cool and invigorating. Creative addition. I joined a local book club, gatherings in a cozy cafe, voices murmuring over tea and biscuits, sharing laughs and insights that built new bonds, filling the relational voids with platonic warmth. No more isolation, community wove around me like a net, catching falls before they happen. Joke 2. Why did the ocean wave at me every morning? Because it was sure I'd made it through another day tied and true. Nights now brought rest, the waves' lullaby through the window, dreams lighter, unburdened by past ghosts. Daniel's silence was a gift, space to grow without his shadow. Perhaps one day a knock, a reconciliation tentative, as dawn's first light. But until then, this peace sufficed. As stars emerged, twinkling like distant promises, I settled into bed, the mattress cradling me softly, the quilt's weight reassuring. My new life emerged not from ashes, but from the sea's endless renewal, each wave a fresh beginning. I even started a small herb garden on the balcony, pots overflowing with basil and mint, their leaves fragrant under my fingers, harvesting for teas that soothed evenings. A symbol of growth from barren soil. Joke 3, what's a survivor's favorite bakery item? A fresh start loaf rising above it all. And so, with the ocean's whisper fading into sleep, I embrace the calm, life mine once more. As the story draws to its close, let us slow our breaths together, feeling the gentle ebb of the waves receding further into the distance, each one carrying away a little more of the day's weight, leaving behind a soft, enveloping tranquility that wraps around you like the warmest of blankets on a cool evening. The mother's journey, with all its twists and quiet triumphs, blurs now into a hazy horizon where the sea meets the sky, the details softening, fading like footprints washed clean by the tide, reminding us that healing comes not in grand gestures, but in the simple, steady rhythm of days unfolding one after another, each bringing a whisper of peace that grows until it fills the spaces once occupied by pain. You, too, can rest in this knowledge, knowing that storms pass and clear skies await, the world outside your window, holding endless possibilities for renewal, just as the ocean renews itself with every gentle swell. Sleep well, dear listener. Let the night's embrace hold you softly, and dream of shores yet unexplored. Good night.